The chandeliers in my parents' Bel Air estate caught the afternoon light like 1,000 tiny suns, casting prismatic shadows across the marble floors I'd walked 1,000,000 times before. I stood near the French doors leading to the terrace, champagne flute in hand, watching my daughter Olivia move through the crowd with that particular kind of grace that comes from being raised between two worlds, the glittering surface of old money and the gritty reality of knowing exactly what people think of you when they believe you can't understand. My sister Victoria had arrived late, as always, making an entrance in head-to-toe Valentino with her newest boyfriend trailing behind like an expensive accessory. She'd been in Milan for the past 6 months, or was it Monaco? I'd stopped keeping track of her geographical escapades around the same time she'd stopped pretending to care about anyone but herself. Mother had insisted on this reunion, one of her grand gestures meant to prove that the Ashford family was still intact, still formidable, still worth writing about in the society pages. I watched Olivia laugh at something my cousin James said, her dark hair falling across her face. She was collecting empty glasses from the side tables without being asked, something she'd started doing at family gatherings years ago. Most people thought she was being helpful. I knew she was listening, absorbing, filing away every careless comment and whispered secret for later analysis. "Margot, darling, you look positively radiant," my Aunt Caroline materialized beside me, her Botox-frozen face attempting something like a smile. "And Olivia's grown so much, still in that special school?" The words "special school" hung in the air like a slur. I'd learned to let comments like these slide off me like water off marble, but something about today felt different. Maybe it was the way Victoria kept glancing at Olivia with that particular expression, the one that said she was calculating, measuring, preparing for something. "She's at Westridge," I said smoothly. "Same school I attended, actually." Caroline's eyebrows would have risen if they could. "Oh, I thought, well, you know how rumors circulate. Victoria mentioned something about developmental issues?" I should have known. Victoria had been laying groundwork, spreading her poison slowly so that by the time she struck, the ground would already be fertile. My sister had always been a patient snake. The afternoon wore on with the usual performance, Mother holding court on the terrace, Father making deals in his study with uncles and cousins, the younger generation getting progressively drunker by the pool. I kept Olivia close, or rather, I kept myself close to her, tracking Victoria's movements the way you'd track a storm system. It happened during dinner, because of course it did. Victoria had been drinking steadily, her voice getting louder with each glass of Chateau Margaux. We were seated at the long dining table, all 23 of us, surrounded by generations of Ashford family portraits and enough silver to fund a small nation. "A toast," Victoria announced, standing abruptly. Her boyfriend, whatever his name was, looked uncomfortable. Good, he should be. "To family, and to the bonds that tie us together, and to remembering where we came from." Everyone raised their glasses obediently. Mother beamed, thinking this was the moment she'd orchestrated, the moment Victoria finally showed some family loyalty. Then Victoria's eyes landed on Olivia, and I felt my stomach drop. "Although," Victoria continued, her voice taking on that particular edge I recognized from childhood, the one that came right before she told Mother I'd broken her toy or stolen her dress or some other manufactured crisis, "I do think we need to address something. It's been bothering me, actually, how we all just pretend certain things aren't happening." The table fell silent. Father's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "Victoria," I said quietly, a warning. She ignored me, her attention fixed on Olivia. My daughter sat perfectly still, her face carefully blank in the way I taught her. Never let them see you react, never give them the satisfaction. "I mean, it's one thing to be charitable within the family," Victoria said, gesturing with her wine glass. "But there are limits, right? Boundaries we need to maintain, especially when it comes to the family assets, the trusts, the distributions. What are you talking about? James asked, always the peacemaker. Victoria laughed, that high, brittle sound she'd perfected at boarding school. I'm talking about Olivia, obviously. Look, I know we're all supposed to be politically correct and inclusive or whatever, but facts are facts. She is mentally behind, significantly so. I've heard the teachers talking, seen the reports that Margot tries to hide, and I just think, well, I think we need to be realistic about what that means for her future, for her stake in the family. The silence that followed was suffocating. I started to rise, started to formulate the cutting response that would end this. But then Victoria made her fatal mistake. She walked over to Olivia, put her hand on my daughter's shoulder with false sympathy, and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Don't give her money. Don't put anything in her name. She won't understand it anyway, and we'll just end up with some conservatorship nightmare. Trust me, I'm looking out for everyone here." My grandmother, who'd been sitting quietly at the head of the table for the past hour, suddenly spoke. Her voice cut through the room like a blade. "You really don't know who she is, do you?" Victoria turned, her confident smile faltering. "What?" Grandmother's eyes, still sharp at 89, still missing nothing, fixed on Victoria with something close to contempt. "I asked if you know who your niece is, Victoria, who she really is." "She's Margot's daughter," Victoria said slowly, looking around for support. "She has special needs, learning disabilities, something. I'm not trying to be cruel, I'm being practical." "Show her," Grandmother said to Olivia. "Show them all." Olivia looked at me. I nodded, my heart hammering. This wasn't how I'd wanted it to happen, but maybe there was no good way. My daughter stood up, pulled out her phone, and with a few swipes, brought up a file on the large screen we'd been using earlier for family photos. The room filled with an image of an acceptance letter. "Stanford University," Olivia said quietly, her voice steady. "Full academic scholarship. I'll be starting their accelerated program in molecular biology this fall. I'm 16, by the way, not 13 like Aunt Victoria apparently thinks." The silence was deafening. "But that's not all," Grandmother continued, her voice rich with satisfaction. "Go on, dear." Olivia pulled up another document. "I've also been accepted to MIT, Cambridge, and Caltech. I chose Stanford because their research facilities align better with my focus on genetic therapy." She paused, looked directly at Victoria. "And the special school Aunt Victoria keeps mentioning? That was the Advanced Learning Institute in Pasadena. I finished high school at 12. I've spent the last 4 years working on my undergraduate degree while also interning at Cedars-Sinai's research division." Victoria's face had gone from red to white to a mottled purple. "You're lying. I've seen her at family events. She barely talks. She's always observing," I said quietly, standing. "She's always observing, Victoria, learning who people really are when they think no one important is watching. Did you know she's been recording conversations at these family gatherings since she was 9? Not the illegal kind, just noting patterns, studying social dynamics, human behavior. She's written 3 papers on family power structures that have been published in psychology journals. Anonymously, of course, because we value our privacy." Mother's hand had flown to her throat. Father looked like he'd been struck. James had started laughing, that incredulous sound of someone watching a train wreck in slow motion. "But she doesn't talk," Victoria whispered. "She's always so quiet, so why waste words on people who've already decided what you are?" Olivia said, her voice taking on an edge I recognized as pure Ashford steel. "You see what you want to see, Aunt Victoria. You always have. I learned by the time I was 7 that if I stayed quiet at family events, people would underestimate me. They'd say things they wouldn't normally say, reveal things they meant to keep hidden. It's been educational." Grandmother smiled, a rare expression. The girl has been managing her own investment portfolio since she was 14. Did you know that, Victoria? She's turned her birthday money and small gifts into nearly $2 million through strategic trading. Her IQ is quite literally off the standard charts. But please do go on about how we shouldn't give her money. The schadenfreude in the room was palpable. I could see cousins exchanging glances, uncles trying not to smirk. Victoria had spent years positioning herself as the family's golden child, the one who'd married well before her divorce, who traveled in the right circles, who understood how old money should behave. And she'd just been utterly demolished by the niece she'd tried to humiliate. "I don't understand," Victoria said, and for the first time she sounded genuinely lost. "Why would you pretend? Why would you let everyone think—" "I didn't let anyone think anything," Olivia replied calmly. "You all assumed, because I was quiet, because I didn't perform for you, because I didn't fit whatever image you had of what smart looks like." She paused. "And because Mom taught me that the most dangerous weapon in a room full of predators is being underestimated." All eyes turned to me. I'd kept my daughter's truth close for so long, protected it like the precious thing it was. In a family like ours, being exceptional made you a target, being brilliant made you a threat. So we developed our strategy early. Let Olivia be invisible, let her be dismissed, while she built her fortress of knowledge and capability behind the scenes. "You knew," Father said to me, his voice carrying accusation and something else, respect maybe. "All this time, you let us think—" "I let you show me who you were," I interrupted. "Every single one of you. Every comment about special schools, every whisper about developmental delays, every assumption that my daughter was somehow less than she is. I cataloged it all. We both did." "For what purpose?" Mother asked, her social mask slipping to show genuine confusion. "For this," Grandmother said, her voice cutting through the chaos, "because Victoria here isn't the only one who's been making noise about trust distributions and family assets. There's been talk, hasn't there, about how the next generation isn't worthy, about how certain branches of the family should be cut off from the primary inheritance because they're not contributing enough to the family legacy." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "The trust revisions?" James said slowly. "The meeting Father's been planning for next month." Father's jaw tightened. He'd been working on restructuring the family trust for the past year, supposedly to protect assets, but really to consolidate power with his branch of the family tree. My branch, Mother's side, technically, through Grandmother, had always been seen as the weaker link. My divorce 5 years ago had been used as evidence that I couldn't manage my own life, let alone family money. Olivia's perceived disabilities had been more ammunition. "I've been working with the family attorneys," Grandmother announced, quietly because, unlike some people, I understand the value of discretion. Olivia's achievements, her financial acumen, her academic success, it's all been documented, quite thoroughly. The trust revisions your father's wants to push through, they require unanimous approval from all living trustees. I'm a trustee, and I won't be approving any changes that diminish Olivia's inheritance." "She's a minor," Father protested. "She's 16 and legally emancipated as of last month," I said quietly. Another thing we kept quiet. "She's been financially independent for 2 years. The emancipation was a legal formality to protect her assets from being entangled in family politics." Victoria finally found her voice. "This is insane. You've been running some kind of long con on your own family?" "No," Olivia said, her voice sharp. "You've been running a con on yourselves. Every assumption you made about me, every limitation you tried to place on me, that was your choice, your perception. I just didn't correct you. Why would I? In a family that values appearance over substance, performance over actual achievements, I learned early that truth is a currency to be spent wisely." Mother stood abruptly, her chair scraping against marble. "Thomas, did you know about the emancipation? About any of this?" Father's silence was answer enough. He'd known something was happening, had maybe even suspected, but he'd been so focused on consolidating power that he'd missed the actual power play happening under his nose. "The question now," Grandmother continued,
clearly enjoying herself more than she had in years, is what happens next. Victoria's little performance tonight has made several things clear. First, that she's been actively campaigning to reduce Olivia's inheritance, likely to increase her own. Second, that she's willing to publicly humiliate a child, a brilliant young woman, to achieve her goals. Third, that she's been spreading false information about Olivia's capabilities to other family members, poisoning the well, so to speak. "I was trying to protect the family," Victoria protested weakly. "You were trying to protect your bank account," James said bluntly. "Jesus, Vic, we all knew you were self-centered, but this is next level." The dinner devolved from there into accusations and counter-accusations, old grievances surfacing like bodies from a lake. Uncle Richard admitted he'd been pushing for Olivia to be excluded from trust distributions. Aunt Caroline confessed she'd spread rumors about my daughter's competence at her country club. Cousin after cousin revealed the ways they'd underestimated, dismissed, or outright mocked Olivia over the years, all while she sat quietly and absorbed it all. Through it all, Olivia remained calm, almost serene. This was her element now, not the chaos, but the revelation. Years of being invisible had prepared her for this moment when she became impossible to ignore. "I want to be clear about something," Olivia said during a lull in the arguing. Her young voice cut through the adult posturing with surgical precision. "I don't need the family money. I've made that abundantly clear. I have my own resources, my own plans, my own future that has nothing to do with Ashford Real Estate Holdings or trust fund distributions. But Mom deserves better than this. She's sacrificed, protected me, dealt with all of your condescension and manipulation, and she's done it without complaint, because that's who she is." She looked at me then, and I saw my daughter. Not the prodigy, not the strategic mastermind, but the girl I'd rocked to sleep and taught to read and protected from a world that would have broken her if they'd known her true value from the start. So, here's what's going to happen. Grandmother's trust revisions stand. Mom gets full control of her inheritance, with me as secondary trustee when I turn 18. The distributions that were supposed to be reallocated because of concerns about my competence, those get doubled and put into a fund I'm managing for charitable causes. Educational programs for actually disabled children, since apparently this family can't tell the difference between silence and incapacity. "You can't just dictate terms," Father blustered.
"I'm not," Olivia said sweetly. "I'm offering an alternative to what happens if I go to the press with my recordings of family conversations. Did you know I have 14 separate instances of family members discussing how to minimize Mom's and my share of the inheritance? Some of those conversations venture into legally questionable territory regarding fiduciary responsibility and elder manipulation. I've had 3 different law firms review the material. Very interesting reading." The room went deathly silent. "You're bluffing," Victoria said, but her voice shook. Olivia pulled up another file on the screen. Audio waveforms filled the display. "This is from Christmas 2 years ago. You and Uncle Richard discussing how to have Mom declared financially incompetent so you could take control of her trust disbursements. Want me to play it?" "This is blackmail," Uncle Richard growled. "This is leverage," Grandmother corrected. "Something you've all been using against Margot and Olivia for years, just more clumsily. The girl learned from the best. She learned from you, from watching how this family operates. Did you think she'd stay naive forever?" I'd spent so many years protecting Olivia that I'd forgotten she was also capable of protecting herself, protecting us both. The rush of pride I felt was almost overwhelming. "I need air," Victoria announced, standing on shaky legs. Her boyfriend had already disappeared somewhere around the time Olivia started presenting evidence. Smart man. "I can't." "Sit down," Grandmother commanded. "We're not finished." Victoria sat looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. "Here's what's going to happen," Grandmother said, taking control of the room, the way she'd been doing for 6 decades. "Thomas, your trust revisions are dead in the water.
We'll be maintaining the current structure with the additions Olivia outlined: double charitable distributions, Margot's full control, and Olivia as trustee in waiting. Victoria, you'll be issuing a formal apology to Olivia, in writing, to be circulated to the entire family. You'll also be stepping back from any advisory role regarding family finances. Your opinion on distributions is no longer valued or desired. Mother, you can't be serious, Father started. I'm more serious than I've been about anything in a decade. I'm 89 years old, Thomas. I've watched this family eat itself alive over money for too long. I've watched you underestimate your sister, dismiss your niece, and prioritize wealth over actual worth. It stops now, or I'll dissolve the entire trust structure and distribute everything directly to charity. Don't think I won't. I've already had the papers drawn up. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Grandmother wasn't bluffing. She'd liquidated her first husband's entire fortune and given it to educational charities when his children from a previous marriage tried to contest her inheritance. She had form. This is what happens, I said quietly, finding my voice. When you underestimate people, when you assume quiet means stupid, different means lesser, unconventional means incapable. You all had years to get to know Olivia, to see her for who she really is. Instead, you saw what you wanted to see, a convenient excuse to cut us out, minimize us, make yourselves feel superior. We didn't, Aunt Caroline started. Yes, you did, I interrupted. Every single one of you. The comments about special schools, the whispers about developmental delays, the suggestions that maybe I should consider institutional care when she was 9 years old. 9. You wanted her to be less than she is because it made your mediocrity feel like excellence. The words I'd held back for years poured out like acid. You know what's funny? Olivia could have told you who she was at any point. She chose not to because she was conducting an experiment. She wanted to see if any of you would look past your assumptions, would engage with her as a person rather than a problem to be managed. You all failed, spectacularly.
James cleared his throat. For what it's worth, I always thought she was sharp. The way she'd watch people, you could see the gears turning. But you didn't say anything, Olivia pointed out gently. When Aunt Victoria was lobbying to have me excluded from trust discussions, you stayed quiet. When Uncle Richard suggested I be placed in some kind of care facility, you didn't object. Observing intelligence and defending it are very different things. She was right, and James knew it. His face flushed with shame. The dinner party disbanded shortly after, family members leaving in clusters, their conversations hushed and urgent. Victoria left without saying goodbye, her face streaked with tears and fury. Father retreated to his study. Mother sat on the terrace, staring at nothing, her perfect hostess facade finally cracked. I found Olivia in the library, surrounded by first edition books that probably cost more than most people's cars. She was reading Edith Wharton, naturally, the original chronicler of old money's cruelty. "You okay?" I asked, settling beside her. She closed the book, marking her place with a finger. "I'm good. That went better than expected, actually. I thought Aunt Victoria might try to physically attack me. She still might once she processes everything. Let her try. I've been taking Krav Maga for 3 years." Olivia grinned, and for a moment she looked her age, 16. Brilliant, still growing into her power. Did you see grandmother's face? She was living for that drama. She's been waiting for someone to shake up this family for decades. I reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind my daughter's ear. "I'm sorry you had to do it this way. Sorry we had to hide who you are for so long." "I'm not," Olivia said seriously. "I learned more by being underestimated than I ever would have by being celebrated. I learned who people really are when they think you don't matter. That's worth more than early admission to any program." "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Mom, did you really know I was recording conversations?"
I suspected you've been carrying that phone since you were 9, and you were always strategically positioned near the most interesting conversations. And you didn't stop me? Why would I? You were gathering intelligence, learning to protect yourself. That's what I've been trying to teach you all along. In a family like this, information is armor. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the distant sounds of the party's aftermath, car doors closing, raised voices from father's study, mother's heels clicking across marble. "What happens now?" Olivia asked. "Now you go to Stanford, you continue being extraordinary, and you let the family tear itself apart over their own assumptions and greed. We've done our part. We've shown them who we are. What they do with that information is their choice. Some of them will never forgive me, never forgive us." "Good," I said firmly. "Their forgiveness isn't worth having. The ones who matter, grandmother, maybe James if he grows a spine, they'll come around. The rest, they've shown us exactly who they are. Believe them." Olivia smiled, the expression sharp and knowing. "Maya Angelou, you always quote her when you're feeling philosophical. And you always catch me doing it. See, this is why they should have taken you seriously." "They should have taken you seriously," Olivia corrected. "You raised me, protected me, gave me the space to become whoever I wanted to be. That took more courage than anything I've done."
My eyes burned with unexpected tears. Don't make me cry. I'm trying to maintain some dignity here. Dignity is overrated. Grandmother said that once, remember? Right before she threw her drink at Great Uncle Harold for making a racist comment at Thanksgiving. Best Thanksgiving ever, I agreed, laughing through the tears. The library door opened. Grandmother appeared, leaning on her cane, looking remarkably energized for someone who just orchestrated a family implosion. "There you are," she said, making her way to a leather chair across from us. "I wanted to tell you both. What happened tonight has been a long time coming. This family needed to be shaken awake, needed to confront its own ugliness. You did that, Olivia, with precision and grace." "I just told the truth," Olivia said. "The truth delivered at exactly the right moment with maximum impact. That's not just honesty, that's artistry." Grandmother's eyes sparkled. "You remind me of myself at your age, before I learned to soften my edges for male comfort. Don't make that mistake. Stay sharp." "I intend to." "Good." Grandmother pulled an envelope from her jacket pocket. "This is for you. Don't open it now. Wait until you're alone. It's information about a property in Palo Alto, near Stanford, fully paid for in your name. Consider it a graduation gift and an apology for all the years I stayed silent when I should have spoken up." Olivia took the envelope with trembling hands. "Grandmother, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to. You're going to do remarkable things, Olivia. I want to make sure you have a secure base to do them from. No family strings, no conditions, just a place that's yours." The tears I'd been holding back spilled over. This woman, who'd seemed so distant for so much of my life, was giving my daughter the gift I'd always wanted to give her, true independence. "Thank you," I managed. "Don't thank me yet. I'm also putting you both on the board of the Family Foundation. You'll have voting power over grant distributions. I expect you to make the rest of the board very uncomfortable with your progressive ideas and actual concern for efficacy." "We can do that." "I know you can. That's why I'm doing it." Grandmother stood, preparing to leave. "One more thing. Victoria will come around eventually. She's not a bad person, just a deeply insecure one who spent her whole life trying to prove she's worthy of a name she was born with. Give her time. Or don't. That's your choice." After she left, Olivia and I sat in the library until the house fell silent. Staff cleaned up, lights dimmed, and the Ashford estate returned to its usual state of polished perfection. But something had fundamentally shifted. The power dynamics that had been carefully maintained for generations had been disrupted,
realigned, redistributed.
"Mom," Olivia said into the quiet.
Yeah? Do you think they'll ever really see me? Not as a prodigy or a threat or a disappointment, just as me? It was the most vulnerable thing she'd asked in years, and it reminded me that beneath the genius and strategy and steel, she was still my daughter, still learning to navigate a world that didn't know what to do with young women who refused to be diminished. Some will, I said honestly. Some never will. But the important thing is that you see yourself clearly. You know who you are, what you're capable of, what you're worth. Nobody can take that from you, no matter how hard they try. Even Aunt Victoria? Especially Aunt Victoria. She gave you the gift of underestimation tonight, and you turned it into your greatest weapon. She'll never make that mistake again, and neither will anyone else in this family. Olivia nodded slowly. I start Stanford in 6 months. I know. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Not of the academics or the research or any of that. I'm scared of being around people who actually see me, who expect brilliance instead of being surprised by it. What if I'm not ready for that? I pulled her close, this girl who just dismantled an entire family power structure with nothing but truth and timing. You've been ready your whole life. You've just been waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. We left Bel Air that night, drove back to our home in Silver Lake, smaller, more comfortable, more ours. The house where Olivia had built her first chemistry set in the garage, where she taught herself calculus on the living room wall before I'd stopped her and bought her a whiteboard, where we'd created a life that had nothing to do with family expectations or old money pretensions. The next few weeks were predictably chaotic. Victoria refused to speak to me, which was honestly a relief. Father attempted several reconciliatory phone calls that were really just fishing expeditions for information about grandmother's plans. Mother sent a long letter that was equal parts apology and self-justification. James showed up to our door one evening with Thai food and a genuine apology, which I accepted because bridge burning is exhausting, and he at least owned his complicity. The family foundation board meeting was exactly as uncomfortable as grandmother had hoped. Olivia presented a proposal to redirect 70% of grant funding toward educational programs in underserved communities. The old guard sputtered and objected. She calmly demolished their arguments with data, research, and pointed questions about whether they actually wanted to make a difference or just wanted their names on buildings. The proposal passed by 1 vote. Grandmothers. Stanford sent their final acceptance packet. Olivia would be living in campus housing her first year. Despite the Palo Alto property, she wanted the full freshman experience, she said. I supported it while simultaneously panicking about my brilliant, sometimes naive daughter being on her own. She's been on her own since she was 7, grandmother reminded me over lunch one day. You just didn't realize it because she let you think you were protecting her. I was protecting her. You were, and she was protecting you right back. That's what families should do. Protect each other, lift each other up. The rest of them are finally starting to understand that.
Because you threatened to dissolve the trust. Motivation comes in many forms, dear. 2 months before Olivia left for Stanford, Victoria called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. I need to apologize, she said without preamble. I've been in therapy since the dinner. Lots of therapy. My therapist thinks I have some narcissistic tendencies and unresolved sibling rivalry and possibly an anxiety disorder related to fear of scarcity, which is insane because we literally have more money than we could spend in 3 lifetimes, but apparently it's a thing. Victoria, please let me finish. I was wrong about Olivia. Obviously, spectacularly wrong. And I was wrong about you. I spent so many years thinking you were weak because you didn't fight the same way I fought, didn't compete the same way I competed. I didn't understand that you were playing a completely different game. It's not a game, I said quietly. It's my daughter's life. I know.
I know that now, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every comment, every assumption, every time I undermined you or dismissed Olivia. I'm sorry I made the reunion about my insecurities instead of celebrating family. I'm sorry I tried to take from you instead of being happy you had something so precious. The apology was clumsy but genuine. I could hear tears in her voice. Are you okay? I asked, because despite everything, she was still my sister. I'm working on it. Therapy 3 times a week, medication for the anxiety, and I quit my position on the foundation board. Olivia was right. I was there for the prestige, not the mission. I'm trying to figure out who I am when I'm not performing for the family or trying to prove I'm worthy of the name. That's brave. It's terrifying, but necessary. She paused. Would you be willing to have coffee sometime? Not now, maybe not even this year, but eventually? I'd like to get to know my niece, the real her, not the version I invented in my head. Eventually, I agreed. Let's start there. We hung up and I felt lighter somehow. Victoria had a long way to go, but at least she was walking in the right direction. The night before Olivia left for Stanford, we sat on the back porch of our Silver Lake house, drinking overpriced hot chocolate from the specialty shop she loved. The Los Angeles skyline glittered in the distance, endless lights promising endless possibilities. Ready? I asked, completely terrified and absolutely ready. Is that normal? That's exactly right. I set down my mug. You know, when you were born, the doctors told me you might have developmental delays, something about markers in the prenatal tests, risk factors from my complicated pregnancy. Your father, I paused, the mention of her absent father still occasionally painful. He couldn't handle the idea of an imperfect child, left before you were 6 months. I know, Olivia said softly. You told me when I was 10. What I didn't tell you was how terrified I was, not of raising you alone, but of failing you, of not being enough, not providing enough, not protecting you enough from a world that can be cruel to anyone who doesn't fit its narrow definitions of normal. Mom, let me finish. When you started talking at 8 months and reading at 2, I was relieved. Not because you weren't developmentally delayed, but because I thought maybe the world would be kinder to you if you were exceptional. Then you started showing me just how exceptional you were, and I got scared all over again. Because exceptional girls get cut down. They get called bossy and difficult and too much. So we made our plan. You'd hide, I'd protect, we'd wait. It was a good plan, Olivia said. It was a survival plan, but you don't need it anymore. You've proven yourself, claimed your space, shown everyone exactly who you are. Now you get to be yourself without apology or strategy. That's the gift of tonight's dinner, of everything that came after. You're free. Olivia leaned against me. What if I like the strategy? What if I'm good at reading people in situations and staying 2 steps ahead? That doesn't go away just because the family knows about my GPA. Then use it, but use it for yourself, for your goals, not just as a defense mechanism. There's a difference between strategic thinking and hiding. I love you, she said suddenly, for everything, for protecting me and teaching me and letting me be weird and intense and probably insufferable sometimes, for never trying to make me smaller or quieter or more palatable, for being proud of me, even when you were the only one who knew what there was to be proud of. I couldn't speak through the tears, so I just held her, while the Los Angeles night wrapped around us like a promise. The next morning, we loaded her belongings into my Range Rover and drove north to Palo Alto. Grandmother called during the drive to tell us the trust had been officially restructured, Victoria's written apology had been circulated, and 3 family members had resigned from the foundation board in protest of the new funding priorities. Let them resign, Grandmother said cheerfully. We'll replace them with people who actually care about making a difference. Olivia, I've nominated you for the position once you turn 18. The current board is terrified of you, which means you're exactly what we need. Olivia laughed. I haven't even started college yet. And you've already accomplished more than most of them will in a lifetime. Start as you mean to go on, dear. We moved Olivia into her dorm room, a double she'd share with the chemistry major from Portland who seemed equally brilliant and awkward. As I helped her unpack books and lab supplies and the weird collection of vintage science equipment she'd been accumulating since middle school, I felt the familiar panic of letting go mixing with the unfamiliar pride of watching her step into the world she deserved. Call me if you need anything, I said for the 100th time, and video chat on Sundays, and text whenever. And, Mom, Olivia interrupted gently, I'm going to be fine, better than fine. This is what we've been working toward. I know, doesn't make it easier to leave you. She hugged me then, fierce and tight. You're not leaving me, you're letting me grow. There's a difference. I drove back to Los Angeles alone, crying through most of the Central Valley, feeling the particular ache of motherhood accomplished, that bittersweet recognition that you've done your job so well that you're no longer essential to your child's survival. Olivia would be fine without me. She'd been preparing to be fine without me since she was old enough to understand that the world might not make space for her brilliance without a fight. The family drama continued in the background of our lives. Father eventually came around, admitting in his own stilted way that he'd underestimated both of us. Mother wrote Olivia long letters full of stories about her own youth, her own struggles to be taken seriously in a family that valued conformity over individuality. Uncle Richard died the following spring, and his will revealed he'd left a substantial bequest to Olivia, with a note apologizing for suggesting she needed institutional care. Victoria and I did eventually have coffee, then lunch, then a tentative friendship that looked nothing like our childhood relationship, but felt more authentic. She met someone, a social worker who challenged her privilege and made her volunteer at youth centers. She seemed genuinely happier, lighter. Olivia thrived at Stanford the way I'd always known she would. She published her first major research paper at 17, made the dean's list every semester, and started a nonprofit providing STEM education to underserved communities. She came home for holidays and told stories about her research and her friends and the boy from her molecular biology class who was brilliant and kind and completely intimidated by her, as he should be. The night of her college graduation, the whole family gathered. Grandmother, mother, father, Victoria, James, and even some of the cousins who doubted her. They watched her accept her diploma summa cum laude, watched her give the student address about the power of being underestimated and the responsibility of those who've been given second chances to lift others up. She's extraordinary, Victoria said to me, her voice thick with emotion. I'm sorry I couldn't see it before. She was always extraordinary, I replied. You just finally have permission to notice. After the ceremony, as we all gathered for dinner at a Palo Alto restaurant far too fancy for my taste, Grandmother raised her glass in a toast. To Olivia, she said, who taught this family that silence doesn't mean absence, difference doesn't mean lesser, and underestimation is a weapon that cuts both ways. May we all be half as courageous and twice as kind. To Olivia, we echoed. My daughter looked around the table at the family that had doubted her, dismissed her, tried to minimize her, and now celebrated her. She met my eyes across the flowers and fancy china, and I saw in her face the same question I'd been asking myself for 22 years. Was it worth it? The hiding, the strategy, the years of being invisible? She smiled, that brilliant smile that lit up her face, and I had my answer. Sometimes the greatest power comes not from being seen, but from choosing exactly when and how you reveal yourself. Olivia had made that choice on her terms, had shown the family and the world who she was when she was ready, not when they demanded it. That was worth everything. As the dinner wound down and family members drifted away to hotels and hired cars, Grandmother pulled me aside one final time. You did well, she said simply, raising her, protecting her, preparing her for this world that doesn't know what to do with brilliant women. You gave her the greatest gift. You let her be herself. I just loved her. Everything else followed from that. Love isn't simple or automatic. You chose her every day over family approval and social convention and your own fears. That's not nothing. We stood in the parking lot watching Olivia say goodbye to family members, navigating relationships that were still complicated but no longer toxic. She'd done that, changed the fundamental chemistry of our family by refusing to be anything less than herself. She's going to change the world, grandmother said. Ours, at least. And in the end, maybe that's all any of us can do. Change our own small corner of the world, make space for the people we love to become who they're meant to be, and hope that our courage inspires courage in others. Olivia had done that. She'd changed our family by forcing them to confront their assumptions. She'd changed me by showing me that protection and empowerment aren't opposites, but partners. And she'd changed herself, from a girl who hid her light to a woman who wielded it like a sword. That night, as I drove back to Silver Lake one more time, I thought about the family reunion that had started everything. Victoria's cruel words, grandmother's perfect timing, and Olivia's devastating reveal. It had been a performance, yes, but also a truth-telling, a reckoning.
The best kind of drama isn't about conflict for its own sake. It's about transformation. Characters forced to confront who they really are, stripped of pretense and protection. Our family had been forced to see themselves clearly, maybe for the first time. Some had risen to the occasion. Others were still trying to figure out how to exist in this new reality, where intellect mattered more than performance, authenticity more than appearance. I didn't know how all their stories would end, but I knew how ours would continue. With Olivia blazing trails in molecular biology, with me supporting her from whatever distance she needed, with both of us knowing that the greatest victory wasn't proving our worth to the family, it was never doubting it ourselves. The Los Angeles skyline welcomed me home, those endless lights promising endless possibilities. Tomorrow, Olivia would start her graduate program. Next month, she'd present her research at an international conference. Next year, who knew? But tonight, I was just a mother who'd raised an extraordinary daughter and somehow, against all odds, had gotten it right. That was enough. That was everything.